Striker 96 is a football game developed by Rage Software and published by Acclaim Entertainment for the PlayStation, Sega Saturn and MS-DOS or Windows PC in 1996. And the game is reflective of earlier entries in the Striker series that would have been seen on the likes of the Sega Mega Drive and most notably the Super Nintendo or SNES. The game itself now on PC would receive decent reviews, but the Sega Saturn version didn't receive that great of reviews, considering it to be quite poor, but it was also stated that there was a lot of other soccer games that were available on both the Saturn and the PlayStation at the time, and would therefore try to recommend that people go elsewhere if they wanted to get their soccer fix. But the reality is there were so many games on the PlayStation that there was a plethora to choose from, and a lot of times there was many games like this here that did have some notable elements but would often be overlooked because again there was such a vast array and selection to choose from. Plus it was one of the only soccer games that were available that had both an indoor and outdoor mode to play in, and that you could play five-a-side soccer in the indoor matches itself. You would only see indoor soccer modes really being seen later on in the likes of the FIFA entries with 97 and 98, but would later be removed in 99, and the indoor features were really cool in the FIFA games, so it was a pity that they removed them. But what does Striker feel like to play? Well, again, this is going back off a series of games that were developed during the early 90s that would have seen a home on earlier 16-bit consoles with the SNES and the Mega Drive, and most notably the SNES, especially for me, because growing up, one of my best mates that lived across the road from us, like, we all grew up with the PlayStation, but before we had the PlayStation he did have a Mega Drive for a while, and then for years he had a Super Nintendo, and he had a version of Striker for the SNES, and in all honesty we had great memories with that game. For us that was one of the best multiplayer games that we had ever played, especially with the indoor. Like, you could play outdoor soccer, but the indoor was definitely the best mode to play in the game, because we used to spend our weekends, now this was even before the PlayStation had come out, and we would spend our weekends, he would stay over at our house and he would take the Super Nintendo over and we would sit the whole weekend playing it. Like, my parents would go out on a Friday night or a Saturday night and we would stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning literally just playing multiplayer games. We'd play a mix between Super Mario Kart, Mortal Kombat 3, NBA Live 96 and Striker, and it was always between those 4 games, and because they were all multiplayer games, and we used to just have an absolute blast playing those games. There was so much fun. We had so many iconic memories playing those games. But Striker was definitely one of the standout games because the indoor mode in that game was hilarious. It was so much fun. You could literally score from the halfway line, because as soon as you kicked the ball, we found the trick that you could literally hold on to one of the directional buttons or move the directional pad around, and the ball would swerve as you kicked it. So you could literally score a goal from open play literally from the kickoff without even trying to do anything if you knew what you were doing, which was mad in all respects. And that's how we ended up winning so many games. And we just loved the sound effects, because the Super Nintendo had great use of sound effects back then, and the crowds, and even when you scored goals, used to be just mad and incredible. So for me to go back and to try and play this here, to try and relive those nostalgic memories, was definitely for me a good experience to try out. But I will admit, this game, it does play really well for what is an offer. Now it is hard to pick up and play from what I remember, because it does play like the old Striker games, but I will admit Striker on the SNES for me was definitely the better game. I found it easier to pick up and play, and it's just generally for me it was more fun. Having spent time playing this, if I compare it to the two, this game is definitely harder to pick up and play. I was trying to use those tricks to see if I could score from the halfway line, to see if I could swerve the ball, and I couldn't really do it as such, because even when you do blast the ball, it doesn't go very far, not like it did in the older games. So they obviously removed a lot of those unique elements out of it, which is a pity. But it doesn't take away from the fact is that the indoor mode in it was brilliant. I have to say I had a great blast playing this here, and it was actually one of the best indoor soccer modes that I've played on any game so far on the PlayStation. Even for the amount of soccer games that are available, the indoor mode in this is a lot of fun, and you will have a blast with it, and it's more so especially playing with your mates. Although I will admit, it's not the best soccer game on the PlayStation, it's far from it, and with the plethora of titles that are available, it's easy to see why this game got overlooked back in the day when you consider it to the likes of your FIFAs and then your ISS Pros that were starting to come out, even Adidas Power Soccer, and there was other titles as well that were starting to show up, and even in other regions regions there was even more games coming out. Like, the amount of football games on the PlayStation 1 is truly incredible. There seemed to be no end to soccer games that were starting to appear at that time. So it was very easy for games like this to get overlooked, which was a pity, because if there wasn't the same plethora of games out there, and if this game had to have been released probably earlier in the PlayStation's lifespan, say within the first couple of months of the console's release, say within 1995, I think that this game would have sold and got more noticed. It would have sold a lot better in general, I think. But that's just the reality of it. Unfortunately, a lot of these games were often overlooked, but some of them are hidden gems, although not considered as the best soccer games, but they all had something unique to offer. And a lot of these games, like I mentioned, they do have some cool traits to them that they did help to pave the way for future games in the genre that would go on to see great success. And a lot of that would not have been possible only for games such as this here. But it's still interesting to go back and play a lot of these old games, as the PlayStation had an entire list of games that were so different from what was available back then, and even do still stand out even today. There was so many hidden gems and even long forgotten titles that we all have forgotten, that time is literally just set into the wilderness, if you will. And for me, they are worth revisiting and they're worthwhile checking out, and this is part of it, in fairness. So it's a great way to go back and explore a lot of these cool little games, just to see what they're like and just to see if you can have a bit of fun with them again, or maybe you have played it back in the day. And I would love to know your thoughts on Striker 96 if you have played it, and what did you think of it? Did you have a lot of fun with these type of games, or maybe not so much, or did you prefer more mainstream titles on the system? I'd love to hear whatever thoughts you do have of this game, so be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future videos. And if you would like to see more content around other types of soccer games also released on the PlayStation, you can check out this playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.